riding maps, signs everywhere, you know, big beautiful banners. Ladies and gentlemen, it is March 1st, 2012. We are here at the Canadian Action Party campaign headquarters in the Toronto-Danforth riding for the upcoming by-election taking place on March 19th. I'm here with Canadian Action Party leader Chris Porter. You can see his work at votecap.ca. Chris, thank you for being here.
Thanks.
Chris is running for Member of Parliament in this riding with some very specific ideas. And so, Chris, if you wouldn't mind explaining a bit about the Canadian Action Party, and then we'll get into yourself.
Well, the Canadian Action Party believes that we need to stand up for Canada, and the best way to do that is to preserve our independence through our monetary reform and parliamentary reform. And as long as we execute those, we'll be able to preserve Canada as a nation.
Fantastic. All right, so parliamentary and monetary reform. What is monetary reform?
Well, most Canadians have forgotten, or they just don't know that we actually own a bank. We own the Bank of Canada. It's our national bank. And it was nationalized in the 30s to get us through the Depression, got us through the Second World War, built our Trans-Canada Highway, built our healthcare system, and created the great nation that we're enjoying today. But unfortunately in the 70s, the government moved away from utilizing the Bank of Canada and started getting more involved in global private banking solutions for our nation, which has diluted us and has burdened us with a huge amount of debt. And we now pay $170 million of interest each and every day on supporting this debt. And that works out to $500,000 for this riding. And that money can be better spent in our ridings and in our communities for our future.
You're saying roughly 30 million Canadians spends over 5 million a day each on debt?
170
million.
Yeah, 170 million a day.
So the math is fuzzy, but you get the idea. It's only 35 million of us. We're spending 170 million per day in terms of paying back the debt that we owe to foreign banks, to foreign creditors. And in exchange for the payment of that debt, essentially, and loaning us the money, there are some sort of control stipulations attached, similar to any sort of creditor. So we're sort of losing our sovereignty the more we rely on foreign countries and foreign banks to loan us money, and the more we owe them and the more interest we pay to them every year.
Yeah, and every household understands it now. The documentation is out there. Every household is faced with 150% of debt load versus income that they're gathering into their households. So they're feeling it. They understand what interest payments are. But as a nation, we're paying these interest payments as well. And in order to continue these interest payments, we're taking the money out of social programs, we're taking money out of infrastructure projects, and we're just satisfying global private banking interests. And as a nation, we need to restore the Bank of Canada. It's still on the books, it's still able to invest through the municipalities and the provinces, and we can still utilize it. So it doesn't make sense to many of us, and that's why the Canadian Action Party is so strong on the Bank of Canada. If it worked to get us through the Second World War, if it built the Trans-Canada Highway, what have we done since then that equals the difficulty of those past times?
Right, you never see in the paper or on the news or on the CBC or whatever, huge infrastructure project paid for by the Bank of Canada, public funds, debt and interest rate printed by our government using the Bank of Canada to circulate money into the economy as a means of exchange without any foreign country to owe anything to. Because essentially, he who controls money controls power and controls the power over your nation. And if we are $500 million in hock to foreign bankers and paying $170 million a day in interest, which is completely insane, I think, then it's certainly an issue worth investigating. Go to votecap.ca for more on that. And we will continue this. We'll pick this up. But I said we wanted to get into the Canadian Action Party and, of course, what you stand for. And one of the major planks of the Canadian Action Party is increasing the use of the Bank of Canada so that we can decrease our dependency on foreign creditors and foreign banks and lessen their control over our country. But it's a big job. And there's a gentleman named Chris Porter, the leader of the Canadian Action Party, who is taking on this job by taking a chance by running in this election here in the Toronto-Danforth riding. So let's get to know Chris Porter a bit. Chris, who is Chris Porter?
I'm a Canadian. I have 3 children, and I look into their future, and I'm scared. I'm scared, and as every good father wants to do, wants to make sure they leave something behind for their children. But we have to do it collectively as a nation. We have to all admit that we've made a mistake. We've tried these other systems since the 70s. It hasn't worked. We're facing a depression right now, and that's why I'm running, and that's why I believe so passionate that you need to participate. I never used to participate, and so I was one of the guilty few too. And unfortunately, the guilty few has almost turned into a guilty majority. Only 61% of the population voted last year. And that's scary when these major decisions of our future and our sovereignty are being determined by a few people elected by almost a minority of the population. So we have to stimulate everyone to get back. We have to get them empowered and say, no, we can have involvement in this. We need to participate. I always say, if we don't participate, we're spectating or speculating. And that's not good enough for Canada.
I agree completely in the sense that it is scary when only 61% of the population votes, and it's even scarier when no matter who we vote for, basically the same policies happen and we have the same issues that we deal with and debate and discuss each election.
And that's why we want parliamentary reform. We want to make sure the MPs understand that the bosses are the constituents. That's the boss, and they need to get more involved. The MPs need to spend more time in the ridings, need to open up more public topics of discussion here. You can't just satisfy those that voted for you. There's a huge population in the riding that didn't vote for you. You need to satisfy those people as well.
Where were you born? Where were you raised?
I was born in the middle of British Columbia at Williams Lake.
Okay.
I'm a cowboy and spent my life on the sea, working all around the world, and that's what I was so shocked at when I returned from spending so much time overseas. I came back to Canada and saw a diluted Canada. And when I started traveling, the Canadian flag was used by many travelers on their bags, almost even Americans, to say, hey, it was like a free passage around the world because you were the world's best friend. And all of a sudden, we're not the world's best friend anymore, and we're just the little brother of America. And so we lost that identity, we lost our sovereignty, we lost our nationalism. And it's not good enough just to say we're nationalists because we have a Canadian hockey team. We have to go further than that. We have to regain that trust of the world, that we're not the little brother of America, and that we are an independent nation, and we do have different points of views.
Fair enough. And you're here in the Toronto-Danforth riding, in the Greater Toronto area, appealing to lots of people. Basically, the whole world is here. You mentioned you've seen the world in some of your travels.
And when you travel, you realize how many of people, general public, actually are very nationalist. You know, in every country you go to, they're very proud of their country. So you have to question why we're heading towards this globalist approach when most of the people are happy living in their country and want to improve their country.
I think you're right, and I think the main issue about being nationalist and being against global control is that you want local control. And here in Canada, what you may find when you get out there to people is you'll find people definitely want to protect where they live, first and foremost. And so your
where
thought,
they live, where they eat.
Yeah,
you know, the basic necessities of life.
Your thoughts on that to the people of this riding, Chris Porter of the Canadian Action Party at votecap.ca. What do you have to say to them?
Well, you have to get right down to the local level, and you have to. Everyone understands that the situation isn't great right now in Canada, and that's the problem. Everyone's feeling it. There's not enough jobs. There's not enough work, and there's not enough hope in our nation anymore. So, once people can relate to you that they understand that things aren't good right now, then they're open to listening to some solutions. Because no one's really offering concrete solutions like a Bank of Canada. No one offers a solution that is direct, right to the point of the problem, which is the control of the money.
I agree. The control of the money is ultimately it. Chris Porter, any final thoughts to end this conversation? I mean, where can people find out more about the Canadian Action Party, about your work?
Well, check us out at votecap.ca as well as canadianactionparty.ca, and just make sure you research, make sure you ask the tough questions to your local representatives, and make sure you get involved in your democracy.
Fantastic. Chris Porter, thanks for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, and thank you all candidates. It is tough to do this, but we do it, many of us aren't politicians, we're all Canadians, and that's why we're doing this. And thank you for your participation as well. It's so important that we participate. And I challenge each and of you to go out into your community and open dialogue about politics. We can't keep hiding, we can't keep debating, we have to come up with solutions. Feel free to come up to me and ask me about our solutions. Feel free to ask about the Bank of Canada. Feel free to ask us what we're talking about. Let's stimulate conversation here. And only by working together can we ensure that all of us as a community of Canadians can truly retain this beautiful country of ours that our forefathers created and have made a gift to us. We must make sure that we leave it as a gift for our children, or we as adults have failed our duty. Thank you for your participation in your democracy, and look forward to seeing you on March 19th.
What was my thoughts on it?
Yeah.
We had a really broad spectrum of people up there. We had on the right, we had all the major parties, just kind of with a lot of BS, and then the center is where we saw the Canadian Action Party and some others, right, where they're actually making some sense and talking about stuff that I'd like to hear from our elected officials.
And hopefully, the Bank of Canada and printing and controlling the issuance of our own currency is on the agenda.